So I will never, not ever, say I committed this crime. If they want me to go before them and say that I am guilty of anything and shooting these two men, I would never do it. This is not a surrender of my rights. If they told me tomorrow that we're going to resentence you, Andre, but you have to give away your right to possible exoneration, I would tell them I could never do it. Because the reality is, I'm an innocent man.
Yeah. I want to send a straightforward message here to the governor. This man deserves to be free of this. His wife deserves a husband. His son and daughter deserve their father. This will be the biggest miscarriage of justice, and I want the governor to do what's right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I've got a returning guest, Andre Brown, and I had the privilege of being one of the first interviewers to have him on my platform and to speak with him right after he'd done 23 years in prison, wrongfully convicted. I had him, his attorneys, Oscar Michelin, Jeffrey Deskovic, and that was at the end of 2022, right?
Yes.
And now, sadly, here in 2025, they are trying to re-sentence you and send you back to prison for another 17 years. Andre, I don't really know. However, there's not many ways to classify this. It's just a tragedy. What are you feeling right now?
I mean, there's no feelings that could actually describe what's occurring.
Yeah.
It's just a mental numbness that has, gone over my body and allowed me to become more somber, because my thought process is continuously with my children, with my wife, and moving forward with the trauma that they are receiving on a daily basis.
And I think that's what people sometimes fail to realize is this is obviously it's got to be tough on you. It's got to be brutal on you. But your family members, your wife, your kids, your loved ones, your constituents, everybody that's had your back in the community, it's going to affect all of them too. And you got to figure, you come home for 3 years, you've been able to be a part of your son's life, sporting events and all that, and now the thought of that being yanked back. I mean, I don't know what we got to do to get this in front of Kathy Hochul and make her see that this is ridiculous. But if you remember when we did our episode, I asked you, I said, well, this is just an overturned conviction due to ineffective counsel. It's not an exoneration. I asked, did you think there would be a time where they ever tried to come back from you? And of course, you being you, it was all positive and you didn't think that was going to happen. And now that it has, did you have any faith in the justice system from your original conviction? And if you did, where is that now? Because I don't have any.
I want to first thank you for just having me on your platform today. You are a great friend of mine. We've bonded a great relationship over time.
Yeah.
And to be back here and express the realities that I'm facing and the trauma, the despair, the hopelessness at times, it's just uncontrollable at times. The anxieties, the stress levels that I continuously go through. In answering your question, it's like, I would have never, ever fathomed that I would be facing this situation today. When you really go into the depths of my crime itself and who represented me, I was represented by a mob affiliate.
Yeah.
An attorney who was working for Joseph Messina from the Banana crime family. When the decision came back down on the 24th, Christmas Eve at that, right? The worst gift that I could have ever received, my family and I. We would have never in 1,000 years thought that the Appellate Division would have said it's a possibility that what he did was a strategy. How could you not give scientific evidence to a jury and call that strategy and say that this was something that he wanted to do through the course of his defense? As it's known through, my medical history, I couldn't run to commit the crime because a year prior I was shot and underwent several surgeries to, repair that injury.
And that was a key point in that trial. Was one of the witnesses who had allegedly seen you said you were running from the scene where this happened. So if you would think that I don't care if it was a public defender, would be able to use that. Hey, she said she's seen him running. This man can't run. And the fact that was even let go is still mind-boggling to me. But I mean, still now after all these years, Andre, I think we're under the same assumption that this isn't judicial, it's political.
I think that this is a little bit more than political. It's a witch hunt.
Yes.
Right? I don't understand it. No one understands it. We have legal teams, who have come on board to strengthen, my family and I, encourage us. We have, communities that have come on board, political individuals. Even just recently, we had Black law enforcement come on board to say that this is an injustice, that this just can't happen. Putting aside innocence, let's put everything aside. The reality is, I did 23 years in prison.
Yeah.
And in doing that time, I came out into society to help society, to enrich society, to alert the younger youth that this could happen to them, that prison is real. Innocent people go to prison. And inside of prison is the harsh realities where you could possibly die. You could never see your loved ones again. Through the hands of the law enforcement, such as the correctional staff, or you having a knife fight in the yard, right? So I came out here to enrich lives, and that is what I did. I came out and I started working for a judge and working with judicial impacted youth and creating programs for these individuals so that they could think, so that they would be able to help themselves, so that there would be no fear from the individual who they're walking down the street with.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, man. Like I've told this in countless interviews with Gia, with Eric Glisson, who we had on not too long ago, and my wife. I said, when I met this guy, we done our first meeting virtually. Right. And then we met at the Crime Con in Orlando.
Yes.
And I said, man, that dude had the biggest smile on his face. He was just walking around. He said, man, I got to buy a gift for my son, something for my wife. Then we met here in New York. I think like last year around this time, we hung out. I said, I've never seen this dude not smiling. And I'm going to tell you, if I did 23 years, you ain't going to want to be around me. I'm going to be ill. I mean, I was ill with what I went through, and I dealt with a lot for 5 years, but I only had to 2 days in county, and that was enough to know I didn't never want to go back. But 23 years between Rikers, Greenhaven, where all prisons were you at?
Oh, it's a long line of prisons. I was at Greenhaven. I left from Eastern, and before giving the history of the prison system, where I went through and how they shipped me all around to make capital, right?
Yeah.
I left from Easton, which is an honor prison. Mm-hmm. And it's hell to get there. You gotta really be staying out of trouble to get there. So, in thinking that I'm facing being put back, it just rips me apart, right? Mm-hmm. It brings me into the realization of death, because I'm not as young as I was when I went in. Mm-hmm. I was 22 years old when I went inside, and now I'm 48. I've been to Attica, one of the worst prisons in the state. I've been to Comstock. I've been to Katsaki. I've passed through, Clinton, right? In transit. I've been to Upstate Box. I've been to 5 Points. Coming back down to Greenhaven. And the reason why they put you in these prisons is because you now become a part of their voting bloc, right? They do this strategically because these are little towns, right? And these little towns don't have much there. So they have the cousins and the brothers and the friends and, the aunts working in the prison. This is their capital, the prison system. We
Good
are
old
their
boy
capital.
system.
Yes.
That's insane. And the fact that I want to keep throwing out here and all this, all these prisons you name, the fight we're in the middle of now to keep you from having to go back is you're innocent. And Eric said it perfect. He said, doing time is hard, but doing time when you're innocent is way harder because you're not supposed to be there. If you did something wrong, even though prison ain't where nobody wants to be, but you got to sit there and you got to know, hey, look, I did it. I own up to it, whatever the case may be. You do the crime, do the time. But when you didn't do it and you're innocent, it hits different. And the fact that they've let you out due to ineffective counsel, correct? That was what you've been a productive member of society, a contributing member of society, like you said, working for a judge, helping out with the impacted youth, trying to get them on the straight and narrow. You haven't went back to any sort of nefarious lifestyle or anything like that. And I'm sure there was a lot of people hoping you would.
Of course.
They want you to reoffend and say, look, this should have never happened. They were waiting for a downfall, but it's not coming because that's not who you are. I know you as a person. I think we haven't had a chance to talk a lot, but you don't need to be around you very long to know that your spirit and your soul is different. And it's good. And what we're trying to accomplish here today is help spread this word because people don't realize how much this happens until they're directly affected. I can attest to that 100%. Before I have my situation, I never thought that people going to jail and they were innocent was a thing, that it was as common as it is. And then I had the situation I went through. I started looking closer into it and I was like, yo, this happens way more than people think. And they don't want to publicize it. A lot of times, imagine how many people they didn't even agree to that they were innocent, but they let them cut deals like the Alfred plea just to let them get out because people want to be back with their loved ones. So you don't even hear that story about them being exonerated because they can't. They took that Alfred plea to get out of jail.
That's right. That's right. It's just so much that happens in the course of one day in prison. As Eric Glisson alluded to, it's extremely difficult when you're an innocent man in prison. Mm-hmm. I've met great men in prison. My friend Orlando, I've met so many great men who they committed a crime, but they changed their thinking patterns. Prison allowed them to develop into men. Mm-hmm. And some of these individuals are still on the inside looking for help and looking for ways out. But one thing is surely and so clear that the public needs clairvoyance of, and that is no one hears your voice behind a 40-foot wall.
Yep.
No one hears your voice behind a 40-foot wall. The individuals that actually carry your thinking patterns and your voice out is your loved ones. Mm-hmm. When you're in that cell, behind tons of metal, crying, it's only you. And the reality is, if you don't have a team behind you, you're not coming out of there. I have so many individuals who I left behind prison bars who are innocent. My great colleague, Rafael Martinez, he has over 213 years, innocent. My friend, Ronaldo Morgan, he's in now for 29 years. He's innocent. Michael Cobb, who has 33 years in prison now, is innocent. Pedro Rosario is innocent. He's going on his 33rd year. there's so many more men, right, that I just was in the law library with, on my hands and knees searching for books. The bottom shelves, we need shepherdizing. This is before the computers.
Mm-hmm.
We were with stacks of books looking for a way out, and if you don't have the aid from an army, they can't bust through those walls. And I thank God that he did send the right army in for me. Oscar Michelin, Jeffrey Deskovic, Vanessa Parkin from the Innocence Project, so many individuals, Charlie Linehan, and, there's just, oh my gosh. When I tell you, so many teams of men and women have come on to fight this fight with my wife and my children and I, you would never believe it.
Well, I want to ask that question in a second. I was going to ask, how is your wife taking this? I got a good idea, but I want to ask that one question. All these men you just named, in prison, wrongfully convicted. If you had to say, it could say it's more than one thing, but what is the main reason why this happens? Because, some cases might be slightly different than others, but is it corruption in the judicial system? Cop corruption? What do you think is the leading cause for this?
So I think the leading cause for this is, first of all, before I answer that question, the influx of the prison system changed during the Pataki era. Mm-hmm. And what George Pataki did was he closed the mental institutions. So in closing the mental institutions, he wanted an influx of men going in, and he wanted to create more prisons, build more prisons so that he can have more capital. Influxing innocent men in, convicted men in, all together at once. And that created a total hell, a madness on the inside. You will have an individual who is trying to study for education, as they had college during those times, and you would have a individual who had mental impairment right next to you, yelling and banging on the gate all night while you're trying to study for a certificate and a degree.
Yeah.
And radio music just playing, and you're trying to read books, and individuals right next to you, and these are cages. So when you think about it, you put an animal in a cage, a wild animal in a cage, not a human being, right? So this is what they did to human minds because they wanted to destroy men, right? And for just the innocent individuals and why they got caught up is because when the cases were given to the district attorney, you had these district attorneys who were just like, we have to get past this quickly. They're getting hundreds of cases in their laps. They're not doing the research. They're not going into DD5s. They're not not examining witnesses properly. They're also getting false identifications from law enforcement. Their law enforcement is setting individuals up. They're getting crackhead witnesses, drunk witnesses, homeless people to throw false identifications on men. And now individuals are thrown in prison. And when you're in, it's easy to go in. But when you're in, it takes an army to get you out.
Yeah. And a lot of times when people see movies and TV shows and you hear these prosecutors down where I'm at, they call them solicitors, but it's like they have a 98% conviction rate. That is so that's just bullshit is what it is. You've got that because you force people to take plea deals. Because if you take a person who's, just say they don't have a lot of money, their poverty level, and they commit a crime, and they have to go in there and deal with a public defender. A public defender is going to say, all right, you might be facing, just say you might be facing 20 years, whatever it is. But if you cop this plea, we'll do 15. Maybe we can get you here. Maybe we can get you to a certain prison or whatever. And the situation can be different for everybody. But if you are pretty sure you're going to go to jail, but you don't have the legal, if you didn't do it, you don't have the legal way to fight it because you don't have the money. So you got to take that public defender. In their defense, they don't have the capability to fight it either. They're limited on funds. They can't do things like I did of hire forensics investigators to come down. A public defender is just going to get you a plea bargain to get you the best deal possible, and they're going to, send you off. And to them, it's a win because you didn't do 20, you're only doing 10. And then to the solicitor, the DA, it's a win for them because you're going to jail. They don't care because they get to go home every night and sleep in their beds. It don't bother them. And, it's such a corrupted system that I never knew existed. And, part of me, somebody asked, do you wish you never went through your situation? And I said, for the first part of it, I was like, yeah, but now I don't, because it's opened my eyes to so many other things, so many other people's cases that I'm like, I got to help shed some light on this, because if I don't, who will? Somebody told me when I first got it, they said, man, you shouldn't talk about it. Just leave it behind you. I'm like, absolutely not.
Right.
I got to be able to talk about this. I got to be able to spread this word. Otherwise, how's people going to know? Because that's, like we said earlier, a lot of times they want you to bury it. They don't want you to talk about it.
That's right. And I think you hit it on the nose when you said, it's the money, right? When you're going into the urban community, people don't have money.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have, the power, and the power comes behind the money because you're able to hire an attorney who is going to fight for you.
Yeah.
Right? These individuals who are public defenders, just like the district attorneys, they have hundreds of cases. And if you don't have an attorney who's coming out of private practice, you're in a load of mess. A load of mess. And that's what happens every single day in the judicial system. You have 18B attorneys, legal aid attorneys, and they don't have the time, let alone they don't even take your call.
Yeah.
Right? When you're trying to alert them to things within your case, they don't have time to even call you, to come see you, to really discuss the case. What happened to you? They don't know nothing about you, only what they see in black and white.
And that, we all know how that is. I mean, they print whatever they want. Even
Right.
when you go for an indictment, you're not even allowed at your own indictment.
Right.
Like, that's just them spinning whatever narrative they want to. Your legal team, nobody is allowed at the indictment for you to get indicted. It's just, the state side talking to whoever they talk to.
Right.
That's why the old saying is, you can indict a ham sandwich.
That's right.
Because there's nobody in there to defend them. This whole thing is almost set up for like you're impossible to win.
Right.
And the only way you can win it is, have a lot of money.
Right.
And to be able to afford that's why a lot of the mob guys that we've interviewed, some of them have been able to beat cases, but they had a lot of money to be able to do it with. If you take an average person that got a lot of money, it's very, very difficult.
Yes. And I think it starts with law enforcement. Law enforcement is so corrupt in America.
Yeah.
Right. You have, I don't want to say all law enforcement, because
Right.
you have some officers who do their job, right? Yeah. And in society, we need law enforcement.
Yeah.
Without it, there'd be chaos, right? So, it is the law enforcement that starts the trail, that leads to the evidence. And if they're doing their job correctly, then we know that an innocent man is not going to prison.
Right. And unfortunately, when they don't, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. And, I don't know if I'll ever trust law enforcement again after the things that I've been through and the things that I've heard other people have been through. And I always tell people with this analogy, I'm like, look, if you go to a restaurant and you ate something that made you sick as hell, are you going to go back there the next week? No, you might go back there a year or whatever. If you take your car to a mechanic and they do something that blows your engine, you ever going to go back to that mechanic again? These kind of things sour you. And I hate to lump all law enforcement in that category, but it's hard to separate because you don't know the good from the bad. But I do believe, like what you said, we need law enforcement. We just need to have a better vetting process of who gets promoted, who gets to a detective level, own up the chain to judges and all the way around, because there's been so much corruption that's come to light. There was that judge that was getting paid basically kickbacks to send kids to juvenile detention centers. I mean, money is definitely the root of all evil when it comes to all this, 100%.
And then you need also law enforcement who is from the communities, right? They're bringing individuals from way up in Great Neck, coming down into the Bronx. I can't relate to you.
Yeah.
You don't know my everyday struggle. They need individuals who are sensible.
Yeah.
Who can relate instead of all the time being on a defense or on the guard, who's able to advocate and who has strong ties within the community, because I'm pretty sure communities need to be able to intertwine with law enforcement for protection, right?
Yeah.
And also so that everything can run smoothly within society. But when you have law enforcement who is just hateful, racist, individuals who just are super tough on crime, instead of having a gentler hand and getting an understanding of what's truly going on. This is why you see so many people dying today.
Yeah. This whole thing, man, is just it's weighed heavy on my heart these last couple of months because, you know, you have a date to surrender, which, you know, depending on when this is aired, which is hopefully is soon, is June the 13th, right?
Yes.
This is your third date that you've been given that you're going to have to surrender.
Yes.
Thank God the voices and I think a lot of the stuff that's been going on in the media has helped push that off. But I mean, that in and of itself is enough to drive someone crazy.
Totally, and being honest, it's only God who has kept me sane.
Yeah.
I wake up with this fear every day that I'm returning to prison. The thought processes of an individual like myself facing this harsh reality is grim, right? When I wake up in the morning, it's the first thing I think about. When I'm brushing my teeth, it's the first thing I'm thinking about. Every step of the day, that mental trauma is continuously in my mind. The return to prison. So, in understanding how it just keeps occurring, it's almost like Groundhog's Day, right? It's so repetitive to the point where I'm preparing myself for, you know, that event in case it happens, right? It's almost like I have to be in prayer mode continuously, preparing my mind, preparing my body, preparing my spirit if I must return to the inevitable of that death. So for me, I know that it's God in the midst of this. Mm-hmm. I've been a convicted felon again for 6 months on practically. It's June coming into the week here, and this conviction was overturned on December the 24th.
The 24th.
Yes, it was. My crime was reinstated on December the 24th, and usually, when they reinstate a crime, you are supposed to be in 48 hours.
They wanted you in on Christmas.
On Christmas, the district attorney actually said, "We're ready for Mr. Brown's surrender on December the 26th." And I know that it's only God that has me here sitting, talking and having this discussion with you right now.
Why, you've been out for 3 years, or almost 3 years, 2.5 years. Why the hell would you even pick that date to begin with? I mean, damn, give a couple more. If you're going to do that, give a couple more days. Get them through the new year. So, I mean, that's cruel and unusual to do on that date. There's no sense in that even being a thing. How is your wife holding up through this?
So my wife is she's struggling. And thank you for asking about her. She's struggling a lot. She has some mental difficulties with this. She cries a lot. She doesn't sleep much. Sometimes I don't sleep much either because I'm continuously trying to make sure that she sleeps. Or, going into my son's room, just looking at him, or going into my daughter's room and observing her, because if I have to take my last look at them, I want to be able to see them every day in my head.
Yeah.
She is really struggling with this. This is not something that's normal. It is an abnormal thing to a family.
Yeah.
She wants her husband present in the life of her children. I take my son to basketball games in Boston. This kid is amazing. He scored 38 points in his last game. He wants to be a doctor. This is how amazing he is. Straight A student on high honors. He tutors second graders. Class president. It's just amazing to be in his life let alone for me, understanding what he's going through as a child of having me in his life. For me to be in his life, I'm continuously in awe in what I see. And my daughter, she's just another amazing individual, just graduated from college. Big celebration that just happened last week for her. And just seeing them on a daily basis excelling is amazing.
How old is your son?
My son is 14.
14. So did they know about the situation and what's going on?
Yes, but the date now they don't know about.
Okay.
So in time past, the step-in dates, because that's what it's called. There's no court. There's nothing at all. It's just me
going back,
returning into court before a judge and stepping behind the wall again, behind that door, and returning to prison. So they knew about the dates prior to the 13th because we thought it was imperative that we did alert them to this so that if I just disappeared, it wouldn't be just a sudden shock to me.
Right.
But this recent date, we haven't told them about yet.
Well, and that goes back to what I said earlier. These things, it's almost, don't get me wrong. I'm glad these things have got pushed back for you. But it's almost cruel in and of itself to keep giving you these dates and then you get a 30-day reprieve. And it's like, have you been having to clue them in on every one time? That's playing with kids' emotions in the most, dramatic fashion of having their father taken away from them. In some case, your daughter's case, you were gone for a long time. Son's case, you were gone for, and your wife. For you to be sucked back in to that hell of going to prison for something you did not even do, that is an emotional toll on them that's got to be unbearable.
So we're in a new age, right? And of social media. So with everything that's being posted online about me in the media, in the papers. Some of my son's friends has seen that, and
right.
They've reached out to him on Instagram and other platforms. And one of his things that he replied back was, "Don't take my dad. Don't take my dad to prison. Don't take my dad from our family." And that was 3 separate things that he said. I couldn't imagine another day without my family.
I remember watching the video of you surprising your son. You were hiding behind the bed or something, weren't you?
Yes.
And just like the look of joy on your face, his face, your wife's face. It's almost getting me emotional now thinking about it. But it was such you could just tell that you wanted to do that for so long in those confines, in his room, in his house. And I think what's going on here is the biggest miscarriage of justice that I've ever seen. It's crazy that you went to start with for 22 years or 23 years. It's crazy that it even got to that point. It's even crazier now that they've let you out for 2.5 and now they're wanting to send you back. And, I've already said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again because it bears worth repeating. You've worked for a judge. You've worked with the youth. You haven't done one thing to indicate you're going to go into any sort of lifestyle that's not, indicative of being the role model that you have been since you've been out to other people. And you're teaching kids like the dangers that, going down certain paths can bring them. Putting you back in prison will literally deduct from society, positivity from society. It will actually give people, it will do the exact opposite. It's not taking a guilty man off the street. It's going to take away faith in the justice system. It could possibly, even have, ramifications of people getting so upset that, things could happen on the outside if you have to go back in. This could turn real ugly if you have to go back in.
And that's what I think about for the kids that I mentor. When I started with them, it was they hated the system, and they still hate it, but they understand.
Yeah.
They were continuously chastised. They rebelled. They were being kicked out of the program, and when I came along, I brought fresh eyes. I brought a fresh voice, and I also brought a testimony to tell them these harsh realities and what they could face behind bars. And they listened. Credible messengers. Individuals who had enough talent to pass the torch to them mentally and allow them to now reciprocate their thought process. And that is the greatest thing that we don't have in society. There's a separation.
Yeah.
With the youth and the older generation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have an individual who can mend fences, why would you want that individual to be taken from society?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's also one of the things that when you have somebody that can unite people from different religious beliefs, people from different ethnicities, when you have somebody that can unite like that, sometimes it's a scary thing for people.
It is born and bred to destroy lives. It's born and bred to make capital. Corecraft itself is on the stock market,
mm-hmm.
right? You can invest in the Corecraft company. You know, this is what they do. Bob Barker is one of the biggest individuals who continuously builds things for prisons,
mm-hmm.
right? And you need individuals in a tailor shop, right, to make clothing. You need individuals in, a license to create the licenses, the license plates, right? Like how they do in Elmira. You need individuals to create all of these tables, like how they do in Greenhaven. They manufacture tables and chairs. These are actual office tables and chairs that they utilize and purchase, but we're paid as a prisoner pennies on the dollar. 16 cents, 37 cents, 35 cents. And it's a strong separation, right? These men and women are abused in prison. It's almost like how the media talks about sweatshops.
Mm-hmm.
This is what prison breeds.
Yeah. And they're okay with it if it's a prison.
They're okay with that.
They see it caught on the news with Martha Stewart, it's different, but
right.
They're okay with it in prison.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, like, when you got to think you did 23 years. For most people, some jobs, you do 20 years, you can retire.
Yes.
I don't even, do you know the figure that you have when you come out?
They gave you, what, $40? I think it was, they give you like $50. Like, they save up your pennies over time and keep deducting a certain amount for you, and they give you about $40 or $50 and a bus ticket to get you to where you need to get to. Now, if you don't have some type of money being generated from your family, because your family's who actually gives you anything you need, whether it's a package, whether it's commissary, whether it's a visit, you don't have anything coming out of their bank account, which they are always getting interest from.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
They keep the money that people send in there. They draw interest on it until it's over.
Absolutely.
It's the biggest racket that's right in front of your face that people don't realize.
Right.
The biggest racket. It's insane. Andre, if you had one message right now to anybody, and I want you to look dead in that camera, and I want you to give them whatever message you want, and I want you to speak it, as you always do, eloquently and from your heart. What needs to happen here to put this to bed? What do you want? What does Andre Brown want?
So that is a great question. And what I would want today would be, first of all, just to see my wife smile again. To see her wake up with the joy in her heart, knowing that I'm rightfully in the place where I need to be at. I want surely for this case to come to an end. This case has riddled my body with perforated holes. I'm continuously bleeding on a daily basis. with the mental stresses and the struggle of my walk in life, because I cannot close this chapter. So that's what I truly want. I want Darcel Clark to resentence me to time served. And then I want to continue the fight for my freedom, because I want to be exonerated. I want my name back intact. I want my voice to be heard. I want to be able to help society and give to the youth, because they are the future.
Yeah. Now, if you guys can come to any sort of an agreement, I don't know if this is in the works or whatever, but if they did, like you said, give time served, that's what you would take, but you would also want to fight to clear your name, is what you're saying. Because that's one of those things to where, like, you know, they dangle the carrot in front of you if you're in prison to get out, because you can't fight that.
Right.
You would still have the ability to fight to clear your name if you're not going back into prison. You would still have the ability to fight that and be totally exonerated.
Yes. So I will never, not ever, say I committed this crime. If they want me to go before them and say that I am guilty of anything and shooting these two men, I would never do it. This is not a surrender of my rights. This is not a giving up or of the investigation or the rights to my exoneration. This is to stop the bleeding at this time and my return to prison, the resentencing. So if they told me tomorrow that we're going to resentence you, Andre, but you have to give away your right to possible exoneration, I would tell them I could never do it. Because the reality is, I'm an innocent man.
Yeah. That's what I think gets lost. When I tell people your story, I have to keep remembering to say he's innocent, because I'm like, he did 23 years, he got out, now they're wanting to send him back. And, you know, you can almost sometimes skip over that telling the story, but it's like the main part of it is, you know, he was innocent. He shouldn't have done all that anyway.
That's right.
And I want to send a straightforward message here to the governor. This man has done enough time that he shouldn't have done anyway. If these charges were put on somebody today for a double attempted murder, they would not get 40 years. I've interviewed mobsters, drug smugglers who've had multiple bodies that didn't do this long. You know, 20s. We talked about this before we got on air. The Gambinos had two guys, they called them the Gemini twins. The number of bodies they probably killed or probably have under their record will never be known, but it was a way more than the 20. And I think both of those guys are released now back into society. And I think they only done 28. This is multiple bodies. It is insane. So at least the sentencing needs to be restructured, because you've done more than enough time. It just say, like you said, your friend O said earlier, just say, for instance, that you did do it. You've done more than enough time to cover that. That sentence wouldn't even been where it is now. This man deserves to be free of this. His wife deserves a husband. His son and daughter deserve their father. This will be the biggest miscarriage of justice, and it will not go unheard. We will talk about it every day until you guys put this to bed. And I want the governor to do what's right, do the right thing. These cases can garner a lot of attention. We're going to make sure it gets all the attention it deserves. I actually just had the pleasure of introducing you to a councilman in here not too long ago. We're going to get this into churches. And like he said, we don't care who you pray to, what you pray to, doesn't matter, whatever your religious beliefs are. Pray for this man and the best outcome that can happen. We pray that June 13th is just another day that you're going to be free and that you don't have to go through this any longer. Andre, I love you, my brother, and I wish you nothing but the best. If there's anything you can do, anything we can do for you, just let me know. And I know we're going to come through this, man.
Yeah, man, I love you too. And, you know, For all of your listeners, I just want to thank each and every one of you for hearing the truth today. I want to thank Wade for everything that he does in communities, everything that he brings to show justice. For clarification's sake, I'm not asking to be resentenced because I'm guilty. I'm asking to be resentenced so that I can just stop the bleeding in my household, stop the trauma that my children are going through, that my wife is going through, so that I can just have a peace of mind without thinking that tomorrow I will be returned to prison. But I want the world to know that I will always and continuously fight for my freedom as an innocent man.
Well, we hope you win both those fights, and that's a problem in and of itself. You're fighting two separate battles, but both of them are very important, and we know we're going to win all of them for you and clear your name. And whenever there's a party or a celebration they had for your eventual exoneration that I know is going to come,
yes,
I hope I can be there to be a part of that.
You will certainly be there. We're going to have the biggest celebration when that day comes. We believe it's coming sooner rather than later. We have great men behind that door kicking, and you're one of them. So I just thank you, my brother, for continuously fighting along in this battle that I'm fighting.
Well, shout out to Jeffrey Deskovic doing the work that he does, Oscar Michelin, Gia Risby putting all the stuff out on Instagram and stuff like she's doing. We're getting that message out there. It's being heard. I think that's largely why these dates keep getting pushed back, is the more people that find out about it, the more people talk about it. Just sharing it on your social medias can help, because you never know whose eyes it will pop up on. So it don't even cost a thing to hit that share button, that like button, that comment, and send it. That's totally free. Nobody's asking for money. Just a share, a like, a comment. You never know who to get in front of. We're trying to make sure it gets in front of everybody that knows about this, and everybody that doesn't know. They need to be clued in that this is what's happening, and we need to prevent this man from going back to prison. Andre, I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you so much, my brother, for having me here today. It was a pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue. You know what we're going to do way after, we see those bells ringing. We're going to continue to have your voice heard.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to allow your podcast to gain more and more supporters. You're a great man, and we need men like you to continue to speak out against injustice.
Well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode of Crime and Entertainment. Everybody, please, when you see this and you go to bed at night, say a prayer for Andre. He needs it. We look forward to talking to you again next week.